What's up, guys? It is your boy Samoan Fan 101, and today we are going to be reviewing Guardians of the Galaxy. This is my second time recording because my webcam is being a dick. Now, before I continue, I got to address just one little thing. James Gunn, who directed this film, had a little bit of a controversy last year in 2018 when some unsavory tweets that he once sent out back in the early days of Twitter came to light. Basically, what he described as pedophilia jokes. Now, on the one hand, look, people make pedo jokes all the time. Corey Coleman from Double Toasted and Spill.com has made pedo jokes. Well, usually playing off of another film. We used to call Blasphemous HD a pedophile all the time. Even though we know he wasn't a pedo, we called him that because we thought it was funny, and he would laugh, even though he would laugh. And it would still say dumb shit, so part of it was his own fault. But basically, Disney got rid of him, Warner Brothers picked him up, and he is now currently developing the Suicide Squad film, the next one. Simply called The Suicide Squad, not Suicide Squad. Apparently, Disney fired him, quote unquote, only to bring him back, knowing full well that they were going to bring him back anyway, so that he can make Guardians 3. I don't mind the fact. Look, when people say dumb shit, especially even though he's a grown man, he still said dumb shit as an adult. People change. People do change. Sometimes it can be hard. Sometimes it's easy, but people do change, and that's what I think they did well here. It was the fact that, yeah, people do change, and most of the parties, did okay. Warner Brothers made the smart choice by picking him up because the guy is just that talented. James Gunn got the best of both worlds by making both a DCEU Suicide Squad film and an MCU Guardians of the Galaxy film. So there are there are elements to it where it's just mostly okay. The one thing I do not agree with at all was how Disney handled the situation, firing him and making a statement about firing him and how harsh they were, knowing full well that they were going to bring him back a few months later. At least that's what the word behind the scenes is. And if that's true, then shame on Disney. Anyway, continuing on to the actual film, taking that stuff aside. Continuing on to the actual film, directed by James Gunn, as I said, this film had a gross income, ignoring the net budget. Gross budget of $232.3 million, and this film, surprisingly enough, in my eyes, made $773.3 million. Now that tells me two things. One, while it didn't make as much money as say some other films, though a good amount, this film, they built up enough interest and trust with the audience, the fact that people would risk watching a film that have characters that absolutely nobody knows about. Second is word of mouth. I think, more than anything, word of mouth was what made this film a hit because of how fun and enjoyable and entertaining it was. So that's what I think happened. So what's the plot? In 1998, Peter Quill is just a young little boy, probably no less than 10. I don't know how old he is. They never once said it. He sees his mother die, supposedly of cancer or something. You could tell because she has the bald head, and of course, a lot of cancer patients have bald heads, sadly. He runs away in grief out of the hospital into like a grass field, only to be captured by a bunch of Ravagers, who are space pirates that are led by Yondu Udonta, played in this film by Michael Rooker, who's a great actor, by the way. So yeah, starts out pretty dark. So how do we go from pretty dark in the very beginning? Well, we cut to 26 years later on a planet called Morag, where which cuts us to the present day, of course, where an adult Peter Quill, played in this film by Chris Pratt, has a very fun, dancing, goofy sequence in the opening credits. Yeah, as you can... I'll get into the tones of this movie later, because it does actually work to the movie's benefit, not to the movie's detriment, as some would might think. So yeah, Quill steals an orb from Morag, like some kind of like room or temple or whatever. Although he's attacked by a black man known as Korath, who in this film is played by Djimon Hounsou. Korath would go on to reprise his roles. Hounsou, I should say, would go on to reprise his role as Korath in Captain Marvel, and would also go on to be the old Black Wizard from Shazam, which just came out earlier this month. So Quill does escape from Korath, and apparently Korath was sent by a Kree warrior named Ronan. Quill escapes, but because he separated from Yondu at some unknown point, and refuses to tell him where he is, Yondu sends out a bounty for Quill's capture. And not only and they're not the only ones. Ronan, after hearing what happened from Korath, sends Gamora after the orb. Who the hell is Gamora? Well, Gamora is the adoptive daughter of Thanos alongside Nebula. Of course, this is the first film since the Avengers where we've seen Thanos, and this is also the first film we actually hear him speak, who is played, of course, by Josh Brolin. We'll get into more of Thanos and Infinity War and all that good stuff. So, Quill goes back to Xandar, where the original, which of course is the capital of the Nova Empire, Space Empire, basically. Good people, basically. Where he attempts to sell the orb, but of course the buyer, after figuring out that Ronan is involved, wants nothing to do with it. Who's Ronan? Well, basically, long story short, the Kree and Xandar have been at war for the last, 1,000 years or generations or whatever? Long-standing blood rivalry. They finally signed a peace treaty, but Ronan is pretty pissed off because, well, his people have been in war for many, many years, and people like Ronan's father and Ronan's grandfather were killed by the Xandarians, so he's understandably pissed off about this whole thing and is just now running amok. Hang on. I'm a little better, but I still have the cough, which is why I'm drinking. Thankfully, the soup in the kitchen. I'll have some more tomorrow. Ooh. Anyway, so Gamora tries to capture the orb, tries to get the orb from Quill. A little raccoon, genetically and cybernetically enhanced raccoon by the name of Rocket, and his plant tree friend Groot, try to kidnap Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord, after the bounty was put out for 40,000 units, which apparently is a good amount of money. Anyway, shit goes down, they start fighting, they get arrested by Xandarian police, and one of whom is actually played fairly well, actually, by God, what's his name? John C. Reilly. And, they are sent to the Kiln, which is basically, not exactly Guantanamo Bay, but it's a bad prison, so to speak. They meet Drax there, who's played by Batista. By the way, Groot is played by Vin Diesel, and the voice of Rocket is played by Bradley Cooper. Gamora also is played by Zoe Saldana. And just catch up with the actors. Ronan is played very well by Lee Pace, and there is one big negative quality to Ronan, but I'll get to that later. Anyway, they go to the prison. Drax attempts to kill Gamora because she's associated with Ronan and Thanos, who are responsible for the deaths of his wife and daughter. So Quill is able to convince him to team up with him and say, "Look, Ronan's coming to her. As soon as he comes to Gamora, you can kill Ronan." Meanwhile, we need to escape. So thankfully, they all team up. They are able to escape the prison along with Drax and aboard Quill's ship known as the Milano, of course, named after actress Alyssa Milano. Ronan, meanwhile, the reason why he even has Gamora and Nebula in the first place is because he has some kind of partnership with Thanos. Ronan is basically has a deal with Thanos that, look, if I get you the orb, you will destroy Xandar for me. And well, that's the deal. And I'll get to that a little bit later. So Quill and the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy, though this is before they officially form, go to a place called Nowhere, which apparently is in the giant head of a Celestial. We only see a Celestial one time in this film, and it's in a brief scene with a man known as the Collector. If that name sounds familiar, that's because I mentioned him at the end of my Thor: The Dark World review when I explained the plot. So yeah, the Collector being in Thor: The Dark World was actually sort of build-up to Guardians of the Galaxy, which is why that was put in there in the first place. So Ronan meets... not Ronan. No, what am I talking about? So yeah, they meet with... They start fighting amongst each other, specifically a drunken Drax and a drunken Rocket, where they complain about their own problems. Drax, of course, is angry at the loss of his family. The Rocket, he knows he was cybernetically enhanced, and he's like, yeah, I got all fucked up. You think I asked for this? No, not at all. Everyone's got their bad shit. They all got baggage, all except for Groot, because I don't know what Groot's backstory is. Maybe when they make Guardians 3, it'll be, what's Groot's backstory? Does Groot have a people? Anyway, so basically, shit goes down. They try to meet with the Collector, but shit goes wrong when one of his servants, who's basically a slave of his, touches the Infinity Stone, which ends up being the Power Stone. The orb contains an Infinity Stone. Forgot to mention that. Which in this movie is the Power Stone, the purple stone of immeasurable power that can bring destruction. His slave basically wants the freedom. She grabs the stone because apparently she's a dumbass. I'll get to that later. Triggering an explosion that pretty much destroys all of the Collector's, collection. Where he preserves people in these glass boxes. You see a Dark Elf, you see a Cosmos the dog, you see other things, and I'll get to the post-credit scene later. Something else you see. So yeah, that's all destroyed. Drax, because he's a drunken idiot, calls Ronan so he can fight and kill him, and Ronan pretty much beats his ass. And in pursuit of the Power Stone, in the pursuit of the Power Stone, Gamora nearly dies. Nebula takes the Power Stone, which means Ronan now finally has it. Let's see here. And Gamora, like I said, Gamora nearly dies, but thanks to Peter Quill calling the Ravagers, he's able to rescue her and allows her to breathe just long enough so that way they'll both be able to live. Long story short, the Ravagers are coerced by Quill to work with the Guardians of the Galaxy in order to defeat Ronan, who, once he figured out he had the Power Stone in his possession, decides basically to say, fuck Thanos, I'm going to destroy Xandar myself, and after that, Thanos, I'm coming after you. So you had that. You had that going for it, and Nebula, of course, works with, or chooses to work with Ronan, because she fucking hates Thanos, and Gamora does too. They were both basically enslaved by him and tortured to be his warriors. Anyway, So yeah, they go to protect Xandar, um, and a bunch of shit goes down. Great action at the end. Groot sacrifices. Gamora fights Nebula. Nebula escapes. The ship, his ship, Ronan ship, the Dark Aster, which is a very beautiful ship, I gotta say, in terms of the outside, how it looks, is being taken down, and Korath dies, Gamora escapes, the ship's taken down, Groot sacrifices himself in order to make sure that the rest of the Guardians survive. Ronan still lives because, of course, he has the power of the Infinity Stone now in his possession. He has the Infinity Stone in his little hammer. In his hammer, and of course, the dance off to save the universe. Quill dances his way in order to distract Ronan while let's say Batista, while Drax and Rocket destroy the hammer, freeing the Power Stone. Quill grabs the Power Stone. He nearly dies, but after seeing a thing of his mother, should I say an illusion of his mother, grabs Gamora's hand. Drax and Rocket also make contact with him, and they are able to share the power of the Power Stone, and kill Ronan once and for all. And of course and in the aftermath, the Ravagers. Now the deal was, if the Ravagers work and save Xandar, they'll get the Power Stone and make bank. Well, apparently, Quill saw this ahead of time and replaced it with a little toy, which apparently, for some reason, Yondu really likes little toys on his little ship. Figure that one out. I can't tell you shit on that one. So things that work out well. They still have the Power Stone, which is now safely, at least up until Infinity War. The Power Stone is in the hands of Xandar and the Nova Corps. A stick is taken by Rocket, so they can regrow Groot from birth, essentially. And officially, the Guardians of the Galaxy are restored, and they go off and do their thing in a repaired Milano. Also, one thing I forgot to mention is that before her death, she gave Peter Quill a present to open for him to open, as well as a letter. He never read this because it was just too painful for him. And at the end of the film, he finally reads it, and she even calls him her little Star-Lord. And what's in the thing? Well, throughout the whole film, the theme of it is that in order to remind him of his home, he's got a little an old school Walkman tape player, as well as a tape that says Awesome Mix Volume 1. This time, in the box that she gave him, a little small box, is Awesome Mix Volume 2, which of course has, cause baby, there ain't no mountain high enough. Oh god, I should never sing. I will never sing again, I'm sorry. You don't deserve that. You really don't. So you have that going for it. So you got the music, and that's how the film ends, with the Guardians formally forming. I should which try to saying that 5 times fast. Groot is being regrown, and in the post-credit scene, we see the Collector with all of his destroyed goods. And like I said, one of the things that was in his pod, not just Cosmo the dog, but also an anthropomorphic duck, which of course, especially if you've seen Nostalgia Critic, you'll know to be Howard the Duck. Yes, that 5 seconds that we saw Howard the Duck speaking on screen was probably better than the entire Howard the Duck movie back in 1986. My god. So, okay. So, what can I say about this film? This film was fucking amazing, that's what I can say about it. This film did a very good job setting things up. What's great about it? Well, first of all, let's face it, the best part of this entire film is the casting. All the casting is on point. Vin Diesel as Groot, Bradley Cooper is the voice of Rocket. Karen Gillan as Nebula also did a great job. You got a lot of great actors here. You got Benicio del Toro as the Collector, who plays it so over the top. He's actually quite hilarious. Not over the top like he did in Last Jedi, where it was kind of goofy but kind of serious at the same time. No, this was entirely goofy, and it's like he had his completely own personality. So you had that. So yeah, the casting is what made the film, and not just the casting, but the characters themselves. It was a mix of the casting and the characters. This film has a simple plot. You already know, about 30 minutes into the film, maybe even less than that, what's going to happen. Or maybe not every little thing, but mostly what's going to happen, the general key plot points. That's not what makes this film tick. Very similar to Iron Man and Thor. What makes it tick is not the plot, because in those films it was a redemption and fish out of water story. And this film, it was kind of like a team-up film with various misfits, almost. What makes it work are the characters themselves and how they work off of one another. Very similar to Star Wars, in fact. And that's the best comparison I can make for this film, is the fact it's very much like Star Wars, where you take a ragtag group of people who are different from each other, and they somehow find a way to work together, and then we work out their differences and become a team by the end of the film. And clearly they had to take in some inspiration from these space-style films. Star-Lord, Star-Lord's not a bad guy, but he clearly works for more on the wrong side, works for himself, but throughout the film, slowly but surely becomes more and more good, and by the time Ronan gets the Infinity Stone, he's like, we gotta stop him. Shit's going down. And Gamora, who's always wanted to do the right thing, but of course, is just haunted by the fact that she was raised by Thanos to be an assassin. Drax, of course, doesn't trust a lot of people because what happened in his past, but he grows to treat the others as friends, even though at one point he called Gamora a green whore, which is so friggin' hilarious, and he meant it in a good way. It's like, this dumb tree is my friend. This green horror. That made me laugh. Gamora, of course, she grows closer to Quill because of their sad backstories. Everyone's got a sad backstory, all except for Groot, apparently. Even Ronan. I'll get to the negative of Ronan, but the one thing I like about Ronan is that he has a cool look. He has a legit reason for wanting to destroy Xandar, and he has legit reason because they killed members of his family, probably people that he was very close to. I could see where he's a little bit pissed off about the whole treaty. You can understand it. He's not the most interesting. He's similar to Malekith, but the difference is they actually gave Ronan a little bit of dimension. Malekith, they gave absolutely no dimension, which was one of the biggest problems of that film. I know I keep harping on Malekith. My God, that really was a terrible villain. Seconded, there is a second later on in Doctor Strange, but I'll get to that film when I get to it. So everyone's on point. Everyone does their job very well. The special effects, for the most part, not everything, but for the most part, the special effects are great. The makeup design, I saw the behind the scenes, the makeup design was absolutely fantastic, especially on both Drax and Gamora. For Zoe Saldana and Dave Bautista's characters, they were all great. And not just them, but a lot of characters, Xandarians and all that. The Kree, all of them worked very, very well. The only one that was entirely CG was Thanos, Groot, and Drax. And for the most part, Groot and Rocket. And for the most part, Groot and Rocket are very much they look very realistic in this film. Thanos not so much, but to be fair, he's barely in the film, so it's not that bad. So yeah, there is a lot of shall we say. A lot of really good... The humor, I kind of alluded to this, but the humor. This is by far the... I said at one point Iron Man 3 was the funniest. I take it back. Looking back at all the films, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is by far the funniest of all of the Marvel films, all MCU films, I should say, so far. Other films are comedy, but this one was just very funny and just really a lot of it has to do with the characters playing off each other, as well as the fact that the actors were given free range to say whatever the hell they wanted to say in some areas. Not all areas, but some areas. The worlds looked nice. They looked very good. The environments looked great. And, what kind of, a lot of things. A lot of things really, really worked in this film. What are some things that didn't work? Or should I say, somewhat negatives? And I say somewhat because they're not big, but they do keep it away from the 10 out of 10 rating, which kind of gives you an idea of where I rate this film. This movie has, let's see here. This movie has a very basic plot. Like I said earlier, it's basic in the sense that you know where it's going to go pretty early on. But, of course, like I said, the difference between this film and a lot of films that do fail is the characters and, of course, the execution. But yeah, to be fair, it is a plot. And while you can get sucked into it, there are some that I believe that will have a problem with the fact that the plot is basic. I didn't have a problem with it too much, but I did kind of see where it was going to go. Although, then again, I've seen the film 1,000 times, so you could call it a minor nitpick, but I know some other people are going to do it. Another thing I gotta say, and before I go to Ronan, I gotta say this about the character. Remember that slave I said earlier, basically tried to use the Power Stone as a means of escape because she didn't want to be the Collector's slave. Only mere moments earlier, the Collector said that that even people who tried to master the power of the stone got destroyed. Basically saying, don't touch the fucking stone or else you're going to die and probably have a giant explosion. And what does this woman do? She touches it, and what happens? She dies in a giant explosion. Now you could say, okay, maybe she was killing herself because she thought that was the best way out. Problem is, you see her death, what her face is. Clearly she didn't want to die. She was screaming in agony. She didn't want to die. At least seemingly didn't want to die. If she didn't, and if it wasn't, if the idea was to commit suicide, then it wasn't a big deal. But, and I think it's the latter, what I'm about to say. If she did want to use that as a means of escape, she's a fucking moron. Because it's like, really? You were just told moments earlier that this thing could possibly kill a whole bunch of people, not just one person, by just simply touching it, and yet you do it anyway. I'm like, moron. Then you had, one other thing I gotta mention, and that's Ronan. Ronan is not a terrible villain. In some ways, I like him. He's got a very cool, badass look. I mean, let's face it, he looks badass in this film. Lee Pace does a great voice with him, unlike Malik, again, I'm mentioning him again, Malekith in Thor the Dark World. Thor the Dark World. Ronan the Accuser has an absolutely great voice. He has a great look. He's even got a decent backstory. But he is missing that one quality that is really needed for a character. He's not that three-dimensional of a character. He's very basic, very straightforward on what he wants to do. He wants to destroy Xandar. There's not a whole lot of dimension to him. He's just basically a power-hungry dictator. Now, that's not too much of a bad thing because we've seen power-hungry dictators before, both in film and in other media. For example, when I was watching the film, I don't know about you guys, but I was getting an M. Bison vibe from him, from Street Fighter. You know, especially in the media, like TV shows, movies, and the games, of course, was that, you know, he kills people all the time, and he doesn't even bother to remember it. It's like the line from the Street Fighter live-action film with Jean-Claude Van Damme, where Bison's like, you spent your whole life trying to come after me for killing your father. For me, it was only Tuesday. Basically saying, yeah, I killed a bunch of people. Don't give a shit. I barely remember. Or maybe I do, and I just don't care. So, I like that aspect of him. I just wish they made him more three-dimensional, especially in a film a film franchise like the MCU that needs more three-dimensional villains. Like, kind of similar to what we had with Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and the Avengers with Loki. And, of course, Winter Soldier with Alexander Pierce. I wish we had more of that. So, to give him a more three-dimensional aspects to him, I think he would have had an absolutely amazing villain. With that said, we get more the bland, boring side that has an air of coolness about him, which is the only saving grace. So those little things, in my opinion, give it a 9 out of 10. But still, my personal rating is a 9 out of 10. This film is great. It's fantastic. It's funny. It's well written. It's well acted more than anything, and it makes you believe in the story. It also looks great. So yeah, I'm gonna give this film a 9 out of 10. Till next time, guys. I'll see you next time tomorrow when I review Avengers: Age of Ultron, and as well as Ant-Man, hopefully, which will be closing Phase 2 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Till next time, guys. Be well, stay safe, have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time on the next video. Peace.